Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, everyone. Joe Simons, like diamonds, back again with Salt Strong Unchurched. And I usually kick it off with the subject line or the headline of the podcast, but I'll be honest, I don't know what it's going to be yet. And I've had quite a few conversations, and you've probably heard some of these conversations with my buddy here, Chris McAlister, who has been on Unchurched a few different times now in the past. And every time I walk away with some aha moment, like sometimes even like mind altering, like aha moment, like, wow, I never even looked at things that way. And Chris has helped me out personally. He's helped me out professionally. He's helped our company out professionally. The company's called Sight Shift, and we've used them for quite a few years now to just help grow our company, both on the cultural side, which he's got a new book we talked about, that we will talk about here. And the very first book, though, was Figure That Shift Out, and it was all about the identity shift. A lot of you longtime listeners remember it. It was very, very eye-opening to me, to our team, to my brother. I would dare to say, like, life-changing stuff, and that flowed over into marriage, flowed over into the conversations and my relationship with the kids, coworkers, etc. And so Chris wrote this book, Make Culture Your Edge, and that was one I don't know to say I wasn't as excited about, because I think a lot of people, just me being honest, Chris, they think I already got culture figured out. Like, I want some tactics on something else. And I finished reading it and I was like, whoa. And I went back and looked at some of my notes before this and all the things I had highlighted. And I mean, most of us are probably have a maybe not a failing grade, but probably a D or a C in culture, and not just culture for business. I don't think, oh, this is not for me. This is life. This is your culture with your family, the culture with your wife or your spouse, if you are within a company, or how you're going to help grow your kids and your grandkids, et cetera. And so I want to kind of give you the platform, because I know there's a lot we can talk about, but I'd love you kind of to share those three main pillars, and maybe we'll just kind of break each one down and how this applies to our lives. And before I say this, what Chris is about to say reminds me of what my mom always says: the answer to everything can be found in the Bible. She would always say that. She's like, the answer to everything could be found in the Bible. And so much of what you write and how you explain things, it ties back into the Bible, right? I mean, having conversations of you and I had where you somehow tie it back in the Bible, like, oh God, my mom's right. And she's probably listening to this. So thank you, Mom. Thank you, Mom. But Chris, I'll give you the platform. What are the three pillars, and how is this going to make our lives better?
Yeah, man, what an honor to be here. Thank you. And, for me, I would never be one to correct your mother. And, but I would say, let's get in that dangerous territory. Every question worth asking.
Love it.
So maybe before I get into three principles real quick, like origin story, like where does this, for me come from? And really, this is all of my work. And I don't think this is a story I've ever told you. So when I was 18 years old, and the context is just had a dramatic, life-altering, mission-altering, purpose-altering experience. Like my whole life comes out of that moment. I was 18 years old. And the byline real quick is that I grew up in the home of a pastor. My dad was on radio and TV since I was like 5 years old. I'd get in the car and hear him on the radio, and that was normal. He pastored like larger churches in small areas. And the church he was pastoring, Joe, split. Now, right there are people that I'm bringing up church hurt and church trauma. And so everybody kind of has a take on that, and they're like, yeah, that's why it's so bad and broken, or whatever. Wherever your take is, just stay with me, because there's reconstruction after the deconstruction. And you're going to see this moment in marriages and in families. And If any of us have had to walk through those moments where we've restored one of our kids who have lost their way, and all the things that are real life that I've been through, that we have friends that have been through. And so what was happening in that moment was the church had grown really fast and the power base was threatened. And sad to say, there are people who like to feel like a big fish in a small pond. And this happens in some of these structures all the time. So I'm 18 years old and I'm sitting there in a service and this guy gets up, Joe, while my dad is preaching, and interrupts him and like tries to take over.
Oh.
It was crazy. And I'm 18. I don't know anything. There's a lot more I could break down about this experience, that I see it from multiple angles now. But at that moment, all I saw was one thing. That man is doing wrong to my dad. So I get up, and this is an older word that you don't hear a lot now, but there was a pulpit, right? Big wooden thing attached to the center of the Earth's axis. Not really, but you get the idea. And I stand behind this pulpit, and I didn't like have to look for these words. They just showed up. And I remember this, like, as much as we're sitting here now, the problem isn't what that man just did. It's what all the other men aren't doing right now to take a stand. And it galvanized a moment. And for like a month, it was truly like all out idea warfare. I mean, they were mailing packets out and getting petitions signed and cornering people. And it was dramatic and as crazy as you can imagine. And I don't know have you seen Batman, The Dark Knight Rises, the Bane character, the bad guy? You know, he speaks with the Matt, you will. He says this line in the movies. He's like, we're not afraid of the darkness. We were initiated in the darkness. I was born in the darkness. And Joe, the crazy thing here, and we can laugh about it because I'm insane and mostly contained neuroticism is how I make a living. I was born in the darkness. In this sense, like everything about my life and my trajectory and my focus and my mission and my purpose came out of a very dark moment in culture. So I've spent like years and years and years and years and years thinking about this. And you know, we've worked with hundreds of companies from scrappy startups to $50 billion companies. And what we're going to walk through these three pillars, it's the same over and over and over again. And if you can learn to look for it, it changes everything. Now, what's really powerful about this is there was an idea the Greeks had, and they thought of culture as resting on three pillars. So a culture exists, civic culture, family culture, relational, whatever. It exists built on these three things. And they had a word, pistis or pisteo, faith, elpis, hope. And you got to know that word elpis that they used. They had words for you flip a coin in a wishing well, fingers crossed. I hope it's true. You know, I was at the Hamilton Place Mall, Chattanooga, 9th grade, and I flipped a coin in the fountain at the mall. It was a wishing well. And I said, I hope Gretchen Cross likes me. And the spoiler is she did, Joe, but we moved away. So we're not talking about that kind of like hopeful wishing. Like we're talking about a word that means because I am convinced blank will happen, I will act and behave this way. That's what they meant by elpis or hope. And so they said that culture is built on pisteo, elpis, faith, hope. And then they had a third word, apotheia, which meant like a withdrawn removal, how we would think of the term stoicism. I'm not emotionally caught up in this. Rise or fall, I'm good. Now, what's powerful about this is what Paul did in Corinthians was he said, three things last forever. This is what reality is built on. This is how God builds culture. Faith, elpis, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. So what Paul was doing that was so powerful there was he was taking the Greek model and completing it and finishing it. And of course, by the Holy Spirit, innovating it to something that's beautiful, concrete, that can actually help you in a moment's notice figure out where is our culture off? Where is it good? We need to protect it. Where do we need to conserve things? Where do we need to progress things? And we're just looking at these three markers. Faith. There's an unseen reality that we believe can be true. We believe our marriage can turn around. We believe this child can come back. We believe our family is bonded and doing awesome. but next year's relationship for our family can be even better than this year. So whether it's good and needs to be great, continue, or bad and turning around, this increasing faith. And out of that picture, we see we are making changes. We are living changed because we believe this can happen. And then the net result of that is a deepening connection. So we think about it in terms of, if you use simple terms, it's what's communicated, what's changed, and then the connection that comes out of that. Faith, hope, and love. And I'm crazy passionate about it because it will equip you in the moment to see what's going on and where you need to put your effort.
I love it. I've done a lot of podcasts about the mission and the purpose and the vision, if you will, and not just for companies, for ourselves, for our families, how we're going to lead. And what I'm hearing you say is that is the mission or the purpose or the vision, right? You're able to see there is something better in the future, regardless of where you are. You're trying to get there, and you're able to have that faith to communicate it to others, whether it be one person or 1,000 people. And I mean, I'll have a whole book, right? I mean, Fishing for Happiness, that was the main pillar, was it, without some sort of purpose and a belief or faith that things are going to get better and that you can improve whatever it is that you're trying to do. It's really tough to find, for me, at least for me, it was tough to find happiness and fulfillment.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that's, this is the starting point of culture. Faith is a gift received, right? We know faith is a gift. That is a very thoroughly biblical idea. We don't generate it on our own. We receive vision from God. We see in the midst of greatness how to stay on that path, or bleak pain, suffering, what dramatic transformations can happen. Now, in each of these three, there's three components. So for a vision to be whole, it needs three elements. And most leaders are going to the one that they do the most naturally well, and then they're giving an inadequate amount of attention to the other ones. And all of that's biblical. So for us, we look at it as faith, hope, and love, and then each of these three have corresponding fruits of the Spirit and Beatitudes that bake out each of the pillars in a complete way. So what a lot of leaders are doing that are wired up as visionaries, they skip what's so important in vision, and they rush past the pain to the solution.
Stop you there. Give me an example.
Yeah. So it's really powerful in Nehemiah where, he comes, and you got to imagine that the wall of this city is down. So here's what this means. There's no economy. They can't do goods and services and trade. They can't grow their farms. You've got pillaging that's going to happen because you don't have the defenses and protections of the wall. It's hard for us to imagine this, but like complete chaos and disarray. They felt it and they lived it every day. And yet when Nehemiah shows up, what's he do? He marches them around and says, look at that broken, look at that broken, look at that broken. Actually, it says he took them to the dung gate. He put their face in the crap of it all, and they had to really feel that problem. And so what a lot of leaders do is they get excited about a solution and they try to propose that solution before they really make sure everybody understands the problem. And that's an inadequate job at painting a picture of faith. We have to see, feel, and hear the problem deeply. So whether that's a child being parented through a hard season, you don't just rush into the solution with the kid. Whether that's a family that is wrestling with a big move, mom or dad got a new job, and now we're leaving, and our childhood friends, and you don't just rush to that and go, yeah, but where we're moving has all this. You've got to meet pain where it is. And that's the starting point in casting vision. And sadly, very often, people rush right past it.
I know I have.
Yeah, I mean, learned the hard way. All of this, for me, I could raise my hand and go, how many dumb mistakes, Chris, have you made? And so for me, insecure leaders ruin the world. And that's our kind of operating thesis. And when we're in our marriages or parent or lead our teams for our own validation, not impact, we build culture according to the things that comfort us. And so if rushing to an exciting future comforts you, which we talk about that in terms of identity fears, which I have this in my data, it's normal and natural for me to rush you to the exciting future before we even really agree on what the problem is. And that's what makes, to me, culture building so powerful, because when you do it right, when you do it holistically, when you follow this pattern that's been given to us, it doesn't mean that life isn't complex, and it doesn't mean there aren't tons of challenges. It just means this: you can make sure you do a complete and thorough approach so that the faith can increase, the hope can increase. And the greatest of these is love, which is the point of the vision, right? I mean, you and I have a ton of business friends who really love dealing in the realm of vision.
Yep.
But sometimes they forget the vision is the people. It's not just the accomplishment of the objectives. The point of all of this is that deeper community results, that there's greater love, there's greater connection in the marriage, there's greater connection with the kids, there's greater connection on the team. And so what's so hard about it is nobody wants to start with bad news. But that is the path to building a reservoir of faith in whatever enterprise you're leading in.
And what if you don't have faith at all, or lack of faith?
Yeah. Well, that's an honest thing. I believe, but help my unbelief, right? What a beautiful, honest prayer. And so for anybody in any situation, before you try to make changes and get deeper connection, you're starting with the vision piece. And so you just say, I can't imagine this. Here's the pain. I accept it. I wish it were different. I wish she would respond differently to me. I wish he would be this kind of man in our marriage. I wish this team leader would do this. We just acknowledge the pain. And we look for what is the meaning they're going to get out of this. Why would they sacrifice their insecurity to grow? What is the meaning they can get out of this? We want to paint that picture, and we can't paint it if we can't receive it. So we say, just an honest prayer, God, will you help me see what I'm not yet seeing? And I think it's important that the Bible says, taste and see that the Lord is good. Isn't that weird? Taste and see. It's the starting point of vision, to see. And when we can't see and we're not in that place, I believe, but help my unbelief. Don't rush it. Don't force it. Don't doom scroll on your phone. Get alone, sit in a chair, stare at some trees, and just an honest prayer. God, will you help me see what I don't yet see? And if it comes from a place of accepting reality, that's how you know you're on the path of vision. If it comes from a place of hype and trying to avoid pain, that's probably coming out of your insecurity.
I know, I've been there before.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like at one point I had a journal entry, this true story of I think 767 entries of just the dumb mistakes I've made. And that's part of how we kind of, we're able to cook all this down into something simple and accessible, because you take all of the complexities and challenges of really steering a ship, building a culture. And we don't have to focus on the 900 million ways you can do it wrong. It's like the whole thing about studying counterfeit bills. When they used to train them, they didn't train them to study the counterfeit bill. They held the true bill. Then they could recognize counterfeit. I'm trying to help anybody listening today how to recognize a true model of culture. It will protect you from stepping into these places and we've all done it, and I'll do it again tomorrow. But at least I know, you know what I just did? And this is in the connection part of the model or love. I don't like people to have bad feelings around me. So I try to talk them out of their feelings when I'm insecure. And dang it, that ain't building healthy culture.
But it sure does feel good for a short term.
Oh, man. I can exercise control, which of course is an illusion. And I break connection. And yeah, I'll stop there.
Let's talk about hope.
Yeah, let's talk about hope. Help us. So after you've moved through vision, and vision is built around this awareness, we got to face the pain. What's the pain changing going to give us in terms of meaning? and what's the metaphor we can organize around. And that was something we had a big breakthrough on with your team a couple years ago. And I was just walking through this piece so that we could surface the broken metaphor. Do you remember that?
I was going to ask you about metaphors. If you're talking about the one where it felt like we were running in quicksand and we used the bus, we've had a couple different metaphors since then.
Bingo.
Yeah, that was really powerful. And what's funny, it was certainly over a year ago. It might have been 2 years ago. I don't remember, but multiple people on our team have brought that up still today, like recently, about how that helped everything click. Even the robot house got brought up recently in 2026. That was years ago. We did that whole analogy in the metaphor of what this means, and here's where we're going. Right? It was the castle and the moat. I mean, all of those things have been so powerful.
Dude, that's awesome. I loved hearing that. And so, and we're just still in the vision piece, or the pisteo, the faith, what's communicated. When you do that right, you see the pain, you figure out the meaning we're going to get when that pain goes away, and then you put it in terms of a metaphor. That's why God is constantly speaking in metaphor in the Bible, because that's the door into the right brain, so the left and the right brain can come together. We could say it this way. That's when you're capturing imagination. So we had to move as a family unexpectedly in 2015. And I still remember it was my 20-year-old was, I think, like 9 at the time. And they were leaving a neighborhood with some neighborhood friends. And it was sad. And there were some exciting parts of the move. And she was just talking about how she was feeling like sad, but then also excited. And I was like, yeah, you could kind of think about this move like a pie. And you have happy parts and sad parts. You can have both. We're happy and sad pies. Well, crazy enough, back then kids had devices and made images. I know it's hard for people to imagine now, but she took a picture of the new place we were moving into, and she put a pie over it and wrote, we are, with a little markup tool, we are happy and sad pies. So what happens is the metaphor helped her make sense of the moment. And that's vision. And I'm using the most simple example to say that's how it's done. I can point you to tons of company and team stuff where the vision is half-baked. It's served up like a dish with raw chicken on the inside because they didn't walk through the pain, they didn't figure out the meaning, and they didn't draw out that metaphor. And so what you're doing as a leader, family, marriage, team, organization, whatever, you've got to paint a picture. It's a metaphor. And you can't give what you don't have. So you're learning to get relaxed within yourself and not be driven out of insecurity. So this picture emerges. And obviously, if it's a marriage and any kind of co-partnership, this doesn't have to be like you're coming down from the mountain like Moses with always the perfect metaphor. Look at you. You always have it. No, the team can come up with this too. We had our team quarterly time in December. And one of our team members gave us a powerful metaphor for the moment because we walked through this ourselves. And it's still helping us today. The minute, though, it doesn't capture our imagination, we need a new vision. So this isn't just like a one and done thing. This is a repetitious pattern. And sadly, video games are awesome. I was in a team meeting with a group of people. The CEO gave all his points, and I watched a guy leaving the room, pulling out his phone. First thing people do when they leave a meeting, and he had a dating app notification. Now, Joe, do you think he remembered all the CEO's beautiful points when he saw that dating app notification?
No.
Out the window. So that's the challenge. You have to capture imagination. And if yours isn't captured, theirs won't be captured. If the metaphor in your mind is negative, the metaphor in their mind will be negative. Now, done right, that leads us to the second pillar, which is change. A healthy, powerful vision necessitates change or elpis or hope. So faith sees, hope sweats. It works out that vision. This is the change required of us because of this vision. And what's really powerful about this is a vision answers a problem. So you really start to figure out not just what the pain is, but what's the problem. Somebody listening to this, they could have had their first child. and they're about to have their second child. And their daughter is going to have to go from the crib bed to the big girl bed, right? That's a big transition. So we have to have a vision for the family. We're a growing family. We find a fun way to paint that out. And then we articulate the change. Okay, you're going to graduate now to the big girl bed. I have not thought of this in years. I don't know why it's showing up now for whatever listener, but like this was a thing we went through in our family, right?
Yeah.
And we've got to go into this moment and start preparing and changing. And so we look at this problem, and this problem requires a creative or innovative solution where we get beyond black and white thinking. Every family, every marriage, every team, it doesn't have to be wild-haired innovation, needs its own unique innovation to solve the problems they're facing. And as they come up with that, what transfers from this living hope, we become something more. We're developing. We're not who we were when we engaged into this problem. And so now you're sleeping in the big girl bed. This is a different phase. This is a different era. This is a different identity. And what happens for a lot of organizations, because we measure, as you know, identity fears, right here is probably one of the most significant data points. And we're about to put out some big press releases on this just because we've got a massive compilation of data now. This is a big breakdown for marriages, for teams, for companies, because tons of people have an identity fear right here. It's called fear of bad outcome. And it's when you can imagine the things that go wrong more than you can imagine it going right. Mm-hmm. Now, seeing what can go wrong is a gift. There's an old proverb that says, wise people see trouble coming around the corner and adjust. The simple keep going and get their head knocked off. It's wise to be able to see what can go wrong. The challenge and the hope or the elpis is not to focus on the outcome, what can go wrong. Who do we need to become to sustain this solution? You know, we walk with people in deep moments and seasons of their lives. And I've got stories for days in my own life. I'm thinking of someone who hit a marriage crisis and they had a vision that they would stick it out. So that was faith, elpis, change. They saw the problem. They needed more time. They came up with an innovative solution, a structure for their date nights, how many times a week. Simple, right? Not wildly creative. And then who did they become in showing up to those dates? Not pressuring every date to be life-changing, right? That's horrible and too much pressure. But they became something different in that. So more than they're focused on the bad outcome, they're seeing who they can become. So, you know, there's a lot of slicing and dicing I can do, but that's the ordering of this process. And that's why Paul was so brilliant to take it, obviously guided by the Holy Spirit, and go, let's take this model and let's make it whole and complete it. It's faith, hope. Faith sees, hope sweats, love stays. We become something different. Now we can connect. I'll stop there. It's a big bite.
It is. And the toughest thing for me is, in general, most people don't like change. Would you agree?
Yeah, we don't like change. It's been said until the pain of staying the same is lesser than the pain of changing.
In big or small, I would say entrepreneurs in general might prefer it a little bit. We like to mix things up and
we like change if it's our idea.
Yeah, yes. But I'm thinking back to kind of the latest really tough conversation I had to have with our leadership team. So Luke and I, made the decision without telling anyone on our leadership team, because we were the only two shareholders, and ultimately had to make the choice to sell Salt Strong and get acquired. And we were staying on. We had spent a lot of time, months in due diligence, meeting the family, and that was buying us, and meeting all of our new teammates. We had thought over this and prayed over it like crazy. And this is where I probably did a poor idea or a poor job coming up with ideas and metaphors on that top piece of it. Because when we went to tell our leadership team, 100% of them were not happy, like at all. They were freaked out because it was a massive change. And it took a lot of talking back and forth with each one individually to get them to the point that they were excited. And even then, I think there was still some apprehension. And same when we told the rest of the team, it was one of the toughest things I've had to communicate, certainly in our 10 years of doing business. And it was a big change. Ironically, here we are now 6.5 months later, and 100% of the people are still on board. They're all in a better spot. They got better health insurance, better 401k, everything is better. And yet it was one of the toughest things to communicate. And would you say I needed just to have, we had the vision of where it was going. I didn't have the right metaphors, did a poor job of, what would you say?
I got you. So, first and foremost, of all the people that I think I've walked through with an acquisition, you were, and I'm just like saying this, authentically in the moment, you had one of the most thought through, healthy structure parameters qualifications that I can think of. And it was awesome and it inspired me. But that's part of the problem. Here's the thing. You had thought about it a ton. So the mistake leaders make, it might be that they served up a partially cooked dish in the vision piece, the communication piece. More often than not, though, when somebody's been thoughtful about it like you have, the false or the falsehood or the lie is, I said it and they didn't get excited. Well, you've thought about it thousands of times. You talked about it with Luke hundreds of times, and they're hearing it for the first time. So this is the mistake leaders make all the time. They take what we call tension points. They take the tension point that happens in communication as a threat. They take the tension point that happens in faith as a threat. They take the tension point that happens in hope as a threat, right? And in love too, which we just refer to it as confusion, resistance, conflict. There's no advancing culture without confusion, resistance, conflict. I don't get threatened when the team is confused or my child. This is funny. I was in an airport 2 weeks ago. Well, there's the sad part. I watched this dad just totally dressing down his kid. What's your problem? Now I'm walking by Joe and the kid's kind of right here beside me and the dad's right here. Start acting your age. What's your problem? Just being mean. I mean, it's one thing to ask your kids to behave and to even direct them to behave. And we've all been in crazy moments with kids and, whatever. So no shame or threat there. But the way he was doing it was clearly over the top. And he goes, start acting your age. You're acting like you're 6 or 7. And I so bad wanted to look at the dad and the little boy and go, 6'7", 6'7", and provide some levity in the moment. I didn't because I feared that the father would feel very threatened by my humor. But what happens is, we take these moments as a threat when they're not. There's always a gap between what was said, heard, and meant. And it takes time to clear that up. And so we don't take confusion as a threat. We go, okay, they're hearing it for the first time. So it is really healthy for a leader to go, man, I've thought about this a dozen times, even for smaller items. But this is the first time they're hearing it. So I'm going to give them the time and space. I'm not going to pressure them to respond a certain way right now. That's really powerful. Because honestly, the people that are immediately enthused are probably going to flake out the quickest. They're going to be like, oh, this is hard. The people that are thoughtful about it, that it might even show up as some protest or concern. And we're not saying you tolerate toxic, negative people on your team, but we're talking about the people that are processing the concern and even protesting a little bit. They're working it out. We moved into a new home this November. Well, my wife and I have been talking about it for years. From a recent move we had made, that was just kind of a temporary shift, and we knew that. So we had a longer plan. And we had been looking and driving around and dreaming. So we've probably thought about it a few hundred times, and we talked about it dozens of times, maybe more. When we first told our 2 kids that we're going to make the move with us, one had moved out. One of them was bothered. She was mopey. My wife's like, what are we going to do? I was like, well, it's the first time she's heard it. We're going to give her time. 5 days later, she's excited. She's like, you know what? I think I'm going to make this job change. And, so it's not that you've done a bad job. There are plenty of leaders that do an incomplete job. Oftentimes, you're just not allowing the space to occur. And, we were working with a client recently, and they had made an acquisition, and they got everybody together, and they're telling the whole company about this big acquisition they just made. And, hundreds of people. And people had all these questions. What about? And the owner got really insecure and angry. Why aren't y'all excited? What's your problem? What's the first time they're hearing? They're trying to figure out, if accounting's over there and is over here, who gets replaced? What's the redundancies, So I think for a lot of leaders, not that you had done this, it's just that I need them to respond a certain way so I can feel good about who I am as a leader. And when you do that, you're leading for your own validation.
Yep. Helpful.
It happens all the time.
You got a lot of moving stories too.
Yeah, man. It's been a high transition life for a few periods. Thankfully they're little. It was pretty solid.
All right. Love.
Let's break it down.
Connection.
So, how many people would say, I want to go to work and my life be worse for it? How many people want to say, like, I'm miserable in my marriage? Man, I can't wait to get away from my parents. That's sad. And it happens all the time, because leaders are being insecure. Done right, connection deepens. If my wife said to me, do you love me? And I said, I told you when we got married, I love you. That's terrible. Relationships need renewal. That's why it's dangerous when we get with companies, and I'll get with their project managers and ask them, hey, what's your favorite memory here? And they're like, well, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, real stories. I'm like, whoa, that's a long time. They're living on fumes at that point. They need to be saying 2 months ago, 3 weeks ago. So connection needs renewal. How does it renew? And we break that down into 3 elements also. 1, real needs get met. Love isn't a qualitative feeling. And so I love bomb you and we have this emotional connection. It's so much more substantive than that. And it's the meeting of real needs. And, sadly, there are a lot of leaders, like parents, who if the kids bang on the table and say, I want cookies for dinner, a healthy parent doesn't go, sure, you want cookies for dinner, here you go. No, we're going to eat protein. We're going to have a balanced meal. Then you can have dessert. A lot of leaders today in parenting, in marriage, and companies think, I've just got to give the people that are yelling the loudest what they want the most, and I'm being a good leader. And that's how your HR gets 10 grievance committees that rob more from your mission than give to it. And you build 10 little validation cults that basically become complaining groups saying, gimme, 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 gimme. So we have to really define love for what it is. And there's such a empty, vapid conversation around this. It's the meeting of real needs, which implies there's leadership that is practicing discerning what the real need is, what's asked for versus what's real. I was in my mid-20s leading a team way larger than I should have been at my age. And Joe, one of the team members, we had like an executive staff of like 4 or 5. We had a subgroup of leaders and then the rest underneath them. So like 3 levels. One of the guys on the mid-level came in my office. He was like, we got to get more connected as a team. Chris, we should do a required 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. break. Everybody goes to the break room and we're all together. This is before you ever had virtual or hybrid work environments. Now, Joe, how do you think I felt knowing that I would have to stop what I'm doing 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. and go to the break room every day?
There was 0 chance you're going to kill your momentum.
Everybody on the team wired up like me is going to hate it.
Yeah.
But I've got to discern the real need. We need more connection. And I'm hard driving and super immature and young at that point. Maybe I'm less dumb now, hopefully. And I was like, we just need more connection. And so then it was like, what can we do? And we came up with things and we started doing those things and it was powerful. It was great. So I didn't get threatened by what he was bringing up. I didn't reject it, but I could discern that real need. And if you can do that, you're going to take the next step under connection. And that's you're going to take emotion as signal, not noise. Because what a lot of leaders do, and this is how I'm wired up, this is high in my data, is to be like, well, emotions don't matter. Let's win. That's what matters.
Results.
And if results. If emotions get in the way of results, they don't serve us. And you have to really learn as a leader to meet the emotion where it is, not to be manipulative, and not to be overly therapeutic and be like, okay, let me just try to fix that emotion for an hour and we're going to coddle you. Because people don't want that either. If you've raised kids, you meet the emotion, you help contain it so that it has expression, but then it's got to move into healthy direction, which is going to be the vision and the change, right? But the emotion, the expression of that deepens the buy-in so that they're like, let's go. And it's aiding them and developing them. And then the third piece of love is the vulnerable expression. What do you need? What do you need? What's the last thing that's unsaid that you're afraid to ask for or admit or say out loud?
Yeah.
And so what we love doing, we have a culture impact script. We walk teams through this. We walk through the three pillars and the 9 pieces so that then it comes full circle. Now we have what we need. We can go to the vision. But what defines human connection or love? Meeting needs, emotional depth, and vulnerable connection or expression. That is what makes up the substance of a relationship. And if your relationships are good, you feel like life is good. If your relationships are bad, you feel like life is bad. But you don't attack things at the connection level. What's the vision? What's the change? What's the connection? That's the holistic picture, which is why Paul said, these 3 remain forever. When we work on building faith, hope, and love, we're putting our hand to the plow, so to speak, on the things that matter the most. And I feel bad for leaders today. In the age of AI, there's a million things to distract you. A million things in the dopamine age we live in.
Mm-hmm.
But what's going to matter more than ever are humans who have the ability to imagine and see a future, discern and determine direction of change, and deepen connection in relationship. So it's timeless and timely, isn't it?
I love it. I struggled just by looking at my highlights in your book. I usually highlight stuff where I know I need to work on, and the loved one had a ton of highlights. And there was one, I might misquote this, but it was you can't give people what they need, aka love on them, help them grow, change if you don't know them. Mm-hmm. And I always had the mindset, leadership team, we go out and do some things together and team building and have dinner and drinks. But a lot of the other teammates, I'd never taken the time to do that. And I thought about it as I read it. I was like, I don't know diddly squat about a handful of our teammates, nothing. And not that I'm a bad guy or that I haven't tried. It was just like, I'm busy. There's a million things. And it's like, maybe I'll find out about them later after we do the job and they do their job, aka get those results. And I was like, man, it hit me so hard. I was like, I really need to work on that. And it's so true, right? And whether it's a coworker or a kid, you can't help them get what they need and change and really love on them if you don't know much about them. Right on. That was the one that really, really stood out to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I appreciate you vulnerably sharing that, because we think of, let's use a parenting example. We think of parenting as kids are a blank slate to be written on. They're really a painting to be studied and unleashed. And that's the same for building leaders in a company. There's not a temperament that makes a great leadership. I mean, I ask leaders all the time, what makes a great leader? They define it according to what they value. What makes a great leader is somebody who's secure in who they are, clear in their mission, and knows how to build this kind of culture. And that's a template, not a temperament. Any of us can do that. Mm-hmm. And that's what's so encouraging to me about this model is it's not about perfection. We're never going to master it. It's something we continually live into. We don't use it to beat ourselves up. It's just a reference point. Where in my own leadership, and this is me talking, where in my own leadership am I tempted to over-index on the things I care the most about and ignore other parts? Well, if you look at our organization, man, vision, come on.
Oh, yeah.
The change that follows, how clear can we make it? Connection will take care of itself, you know? And that's because in my data, I don't appreciate that as much. And so sometimes I have to get like a little red light on the dashboard, you know, from a team member or my wife. Because it doesn't line up with the fact that, you know, I want to live a whole life. But in the moment, I get my head down and I miss some things. And so my hope in putting this in a form that people could relate to and make sense of is that you don't have to do it all. I mean, even today, and I know it, I've done it. Sometimes I'm talking 1x to the soul, but sometimes I'm doing 2x because I'm just trying to saturate someone's mind and heart with the pervasiveness of this model. You don't got to do it all. Find one simple step. Take that. The rest will take care of itself over time. You're learning how to build. And the world needs people who know how to build healthy cultures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the loved one I struggle with, I think we're wired similarly on the identity fears. And I had one recently with my wife where she had outright complained that we hadn't had a date night in forever. And my immediate reaction was like, what are you talking about? I was like, that was three nights. This is like on a Wednesday, right? I was like, 3 nights ago, we just had a date night with our friend Zane and Lauren. The night before, we're out with other couples. She's like, whoa, that is not a date night. Just because we went out with a couple other couples, I'm talking about you and me. And to me, I'm with you. I was like, oh, that'll take care of itself. We had an awesome time without the kids. And it's funny how we're all wired so differently. Because to me, I thought that was a perfect date night. That was a blast with our best friends. And she's like, that is not even close to counting as a date night.
Dude, I have, it's like you're reading my mail, so I'll say that. And what's insane to me, when I respond defensively, and I have, here is this person who loves me so much and wants, they're literally saying, I want to spend time with you. Yeah. And I'm getting defensive. Sick-headed Chris, come on, buddy.
Yep.
Don't lose the plot.
All right. Where can people find out about you? Whether you're a business owner or have a best friend who has a business that you could benefit, want to read some of your books, siteshift.com, the kind of the starting point.
It's a great starting point. SIGHT-shift.com. Love to connect. And if they, connect in any way, let me know that you're friends with Joe, because the promise I've made to him and a few of his buddies is I'll do my best to personally take care of you any way I can. And then for speaking, there's a link there. It goes to chrismcalister.com. I love being able to step into rooms and be with people and help inspire and move them in a way that they go, I want to live that way. And it's just a blast. Thank you.
Yeah, I know there's quite a few of you who've reached out to me and have told me where you work. And it's a pretty big company. So if you could think about, man, I wish I had someone like Chris who could speak at our next, big event with, your whole company there. He knocks it out of the park. I have referred quite a few people over to you and they've all ended up using you. And similar to my story, have said life-changing experiences, business, into the family. It's not one or the other. It really just bleeds into both. So highly recommend it. And you have a podcast as well, a couple different podcasts, I believe now.
Yeah. We got the podcast at siteshift.com and then 15 and they could just spell out 15 and on Spotify where they get them. And that's where I teach the Bible about 40 times a year. And so super fun, and who knows where that'll lead, but I just had to make it.
I understand.
Yes, you do.
That's awesome. Well, brother, thank you so much. This was so good. It is it's been a good reminder for me that I need to keep working on the culture. As I said, I think a lot of people hear that word and I don't need to really work on that. We do.
Yeah. Thank you, buddy.
Both family and business. So appreciate you. You guys go check out Chris, siteshift.com. Otherwise, talk to you on the next episode. Peace.
'Cause
fishing, it's in my soul, it was